Welcome to session 2 on the empathetic response. And again, I'm pleased to have Yvette here. And to get started, I think as a mental health professional, Yvette, what is something that you would like to have told yourself 10 years ago that would have been helpful on your journey? Right? You have this image where, if Marv could only, now that he knows something, 10 years before, I could do so many things different. What's that one thing that you would like yourself to know 10 years earlier?
Go easy on yourself.
Okay.
Like, how often when you think of the internal dialogue, would you talk to your friend the way that you talk to yourself?
Yeah.
And so the recognition of how are you talking to yourself? So for me, recognizing I'm a go-getter, a high achiever, and the aim for perfection, whatever that is. I'm learning now. There's absolutely no, wait. Yes, there is perfection. There's perfection right now in this moment. How we're showing up in this moment is perfection. So really go easy on yourself. Change the dialogue and how you talk about yourself, and recognize that you are human. And as I say this, I'm reiterating and affirming for myself because I need to keep learning. This is not now I'm going to be easy on myself. No, it's something that I work on, and I catch myself when I'm thinking thoughts that aren't necessarily healthy for me.
Yeah. And the core of empathy, and this is what we're going to be chatting a little bit more about today, is so much about understanding versus judgment. And just, as with that opening question got triggers in me too, right? Life isn't really about switches, it's about dials, if you want to use that, because I can tell myself, don't think that. It's like, don't think of a pink elephant, and immediately you do. So the idea now, this is a dial, I have to keep reminding myself. So we're at the place now where, as a mental health advocate, someone has clearly indicated that they would like to talk to you. This isn't simply, you're checking in, you're finding out. Now there's an interest, like, hey, I'd like to talk to you about that. So how do you start a supportive conversation? So in other words, again, part of the little voice in the back of my head goes, I have to remember everything I learned, right? I can't do anything wrong. And meanwhile, those voices get louder and louder. I'm not actually listening to you. So how is it that we're involved in a supportive conversation with a coworker, with someone, in a workplace? How do we do that? How do we get going?
You start by saying, what are you experiencing? What are some of the things that you would like to talk about, and find out from them, not that you're going to put your agenda or your intentions onto them. It's really, what is it that you would like to talk about, and find out from them how what they're feeling is impacting the life that they want to live.
Yeah.
And coming from that perspective, it's so tempting to go, okay, great. Yay, I'm going to help you, and I got just the thing for you to do. And recognizing that it's not our role as an advocate to fix, it's not our role to diagnose.
That's right.
Really being that human being and really connecting. And I've said it and I'll say it again, it can go a long way in supporting someone. If you just think about it, where can you go and actually have someone really listen to you? Not try to fix you, not try to change you, not try to, I used the example a little earlier during our break, and it was the example of when someone's opening up to you. I'm taught certain languages are stigmatizing, for example. And be mindful of the choice of words that I use. Well, if I have somebody in front of me, a coworker by chance, and they're expressing frustration, or maybe they're using words that I personally would rather not use, or know that it could create stigma, but they're just letting it out. They're just venting. They're just moving the emotions through. It's not a time like that for me to go, well, actually, when you said this, really, and when you say that, it means this. Because in that moment, you're not really meeting them where they're at. You're trying to control the situation. So from a mental health advocate perspective, it's not for us to put how we feel or think or believe onto someone else. It's about them and their experience. It's so important to validate what their feelings, what they're going through, and also not taking it personally. And it's very tempting to take it personally because we're dealing with personal things. We're dealing with human things. And someone's response or someone's action can directly impact you, and it's hard not to go, was that really aimed at me? And take it personally. Is it something I did or said? Is it, you really, when you're supporting someone going through a mental well-being decline, you don't want to be walking on eggshells. You want to be candid. You want to be open. Sometimes it is helpful to share your experience. And so I had mentioned earlier that, you know, my experience may be very different from yours, but you might say something like, when my cousin went through something similar, or a loved one, or a family member, or myself, I did this, this, and this, and this, and it helped me in this, this, and this way. What you don't want to do, and here's sort of like that cautionary tale, is you don't want to make it all about you.
Yeah.
So it'll be, Marv, I know exactly how you feel, because when I went through it, and then you go on for about an hour about you and your experience, because you're literally creating distance between you and that person. So you can bring in things gently, because it is very comforting when you can recognize pain in another, and you can actually recognize that, you mean you felt this way too? And so it kind of diffuses the power that it might have over you, and know that you're not alone. You are not alone. And we're getting to a place in community society now where we're talking about not being alone in these things. We have a video we share in the Mental Health First Aid program, and it's a video of different professionals, so leaders in their jobs, employees, all kinds of walks of life, paramedics, frontline workers, and they were sharing their experience of having an illness or mental well-being decline. And after the video, very powerful, one of the participants shared, she goes, I used to work with someone in that video, and had I known they were going through what they were going through, it would have helped me in my own dynamic with them, and understanding and grace and compassion, but it also would have helped me what I was going through with my own mental well-being decline. So never underestimate the power of when you show up and you're human, you remove that judgment, you listen and communicate non-judgmentally, it's powerful. There's some very powerful words and healing that can be done there.
Cool. With that, we're getting into a conversation where we're probably some of the self-talk. Wow, they're telling me things. They're revealing things, right? I think it's really important that we raise the topic of boundaries, both the boundaries for myself, but also boundaries for them. So how would you describe boundaries as a psychological term in layman's terms? What's a boundary?
Well, I believe it to be, first of all, knowing where yourself, knowing what your own boundaries are. So what your own boundaries are pertaining to time, to what you're prepared to disclose, things of that nature. So being very aware of where you begin and someone else starts. So knowing where, no, that's it for me, and then, so there's that space between the two. You know, for example, time boundary, I'll use an example. Someone comes in the office after a weekend, maybe they had a crappy weekend, and you're busy, you're getting ready, doing, like, you're on a deadline, you gotta get this project finished and completed, and they come in, they just start blah, 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 blah. Oh, I've had a really crappy weekend. A boundary in that situation would be, you're in the middle of doing this project, and you really don't have the space, time, or the headspace to really meet the person authentically and be there for that person. So you might say something like, I really would like to know how your weekend went. I'm just in the middle of a project here. Is there another time that we can set aside that where I can pay my full attention to you? So you're putting a boundary down for your own time. Right now, my time is not your time. And be mindful of your tone. So it'd be like, look, like, seriously, like, can't you see I'm busy? Maybe not the best approach, but just saying, you know, I care, I want to know. Oh, I can't wait to hear what happened on the weekend. But I can't focus 100% on you right now. I'm needing to finish this. Is this something urgent that you really need my attention right now? No, it can wait. Okay, when can we do it at lunchtime? Can we have a coffee? Can we go for a coffee? Things of that nature. So being mindful of your boundaries of who you are, where you begin, and begins else begins.
Okay, in knowing that, there's a few social dynamics that tend to appear. So if you reveal something about yourself, it's almost implied that I'm now supposed to reveal something about myself. Could you talk a bit about that dynamic? Because it's really not a fair one and an accurate one, but it exists.
Right. So if you feel comfortable and it's something that you feel would help the conversation and having that person be able to relate to you, by all means, share something. But there's no obligation at all. Like it's up to you what you choose to share. And some things for some people are private. In some cultures, sharing any form of emotion or any type of stress is taboo. You just don't do it. So be mindful for yourself, what you're willing to disclose. And being a mental health advocate, there's absolutely no obligation to you in any way, shape, or form. It's you're showing up because you care and you want to support and help and be of service. And if you can't, find someone else who can. And there's no perfect right way to do it. I can give you all the tools in the toolbox and as a guide, but really it comes down to really that connection. And to release that, well, I'm supposed to do this or I'm supposed to disclose. Maybe you're not comfortable disclosing, and that's okay. Maybe you don't even have an awareness yet of what it is that you're feeling, which brings me to Brene Brown. I don't know if you've familiar with Brene Brown. I love Brene Brown. Oh, she's amazing. She's got a great program on Crave or one of those. It was one of those programs, and it's a 5-part series, and she dives deep into emotions and the language to emotion, because where did we learn about emotions? We learned our basic happy, sad, mad, afraid. Those are basic joy, but there's so many in-depth definitions of that, and how many of us don't even know what that emotion is that we might be experiencing. Right? So how can I describe to you what I'm going through, and how can you help me when I don't even know, or I can't even put into words what it is that I'm experiencing?
Sounds to me that empathy in this circumstance is extending the grace you hold for yourself for someone else. So in other words, if I'm not always 100% sure what I'm feeling or to put words to it, why would other people be that different? So in other words, if someone's having that conversation with me, they're choosing whatever words they're choosing doesn't mean necessarily they would say these are the perfect words. Rather, this is how I'm feeling right now. And that is what we're supposed to be focusing on, understanding them, not judging them or agreeing or disagreeing. It doesn't matter.
And not literally putting words in their mouth. So I am a psychotherapist by trade. A lot of people think that I'm a fabulous listener. I'm not. I really have to work at it. It's a constant effort for me, because I am the type of person that the minute you pause for a nanosecond, I'm in there with the word that I think you're thinking of. And what happens, and I literally have indentations on the inside of my cheeks, because I'm going, shut up, don't say anything, just let the practice the pause and having that patience, because like I said, when someone doesn't know the description and they're going through, how am I going to verbalize this to Yvette or to Marv or to whomever? How am I going to do that? If I come in there with the word I'm thinking you're thinking of, then next time I got to get the words out faster, and then they start to shut down and I'm not engaging. She's really not listening because she's trying to control the conversation. So be mindful of that. And the other habit, and I know most of you or some of you can relate to what I'm about to say, is that I've got an answer for you before you even finish speaking. This is exactly how I'm going to respond. And so being mindful of coming back into the moment and really be present with the person, because you might be hearing something one direction, you're like, I'm going this direction. I think they're meaning this, and this, but it could mean something completely different. You've got it, you don't have it. So it's really important when you're showing empathy and you're listening with non-judgment, is that paraphrasing. So I'm understanding you're saying this. I think this is where you're going with this. Am I getting this correct? And getting that affirmation that yes, you're on the same page, or we're on the same wavelength, and not to be off in another room. And I think you shared this with me earlier, if I'm going to share it too, but that mind wandering. My mind wanders all the time, and I constantly have to remind myself, come back to the room, Yvette. Come back, focus on the now. Eckhart Tolle speaks to the power of now. Coming back into the moment. So when you find yourself and what if, and bring yourself back to the now and focus on, as my dad would say, the task at hand. So when I get into that panicky feeling or the what ifs, the anxiety feelings, I go, focus on the task at hand. What do I need to do right now in this moment? And that's all I'm going to focus on. I'm not going to think about, what if this happens and what if that happens? If I may, I'd love to share a story. around this. So, and it's one thing that I've remembered my dad said, it's stuck with me even to this day in so many different situations. My mom was going through battling breast cancer, and I had literally shipped everything into storage, and I moved to Ottawa for about 8 or 9 months to support my family going through that. And my mom had the surgery, everything, so she was in recovery, she was healing, and I was now in the process of moving back to Toronto to re-begin or continue my life in Toronto. And just as I'm packing up all my stuff, my little cat Tava, who my dad was graciously allowing me to bring with me, he hates cats, but he still let me bring them to my parents' home. And I was petting her, and I noticed a massive lump on her abdomen. And I knew in that moment, okay, this is not good. And she had a brother Tiki, a male cat. And I remember coming down the ramp in the garage. My dad's at the bottom of the garage, and I'm sobbing.
Oh yeah.
Because I think a lot of it too is the emotions and feelings I had with my mom, and then also now going through this, it was like one more thing. Wow, another thing. And I was sobbing, and I had fur stuck to my face because of all the tears. And my dad is talking to me, and I said, I'm gonna have to take Tiki or Tava to the vet, and I think this is going to be a goodbye. And I go, and I have to move, and I have to this, and I have to, and everything was just all of a sudden building up. And he looked at me, he goes, Yvette, focus on the task at hand. And it was in that moment, I literally released all of those other things, and I focused on, what do I need to do right now? I need to get Tava to the vet. And I use that in every situation in my life when I start getting it's a little bit overwhelming, there's just so much, okay, hang on, what do I need to do right now? It could literally mean go outside and take a big, deep breath of air. Sometimes it's as simple as that. It's those little things that can bring us back into the now, because the other thoughts can carry us away, and then we're no good to anything or anyone, because we just can't function. Yeah. Right?
So when we're in those circumstances, and I like doing an exercise, I'll ask audiences and classes, be quiet and listen. What's the loudest, what do you hear? And they will come back with, well, I hear the fan, I hear this. And I said, yeah, all of those pale in comparison to the loudest noise in your head. And they're going, well, what's that? Well, your voice, what we're telling ourselves, what we're saying to ourselves, all these things that we're yelling. To be present with someone, we need to find ways of quieting that so we can be attentive, so we can create rapport. So again, the empathetic response, again, is not about judging. It's not about saying agreeing or disagreeing. It's about understanding. It's, how is it that you see this? How is it that, so those are some of the questions that we'd like to head, not because I need to know this about you. So this isn't about me being a Beninsky and, I want to find out about this, but rather helping you, again, think through, feel through some of the stuff that you're actually experiencing. So what are some of the questions that you found helpful when someone is beginning to disclose, some of the problems they're facing, whether it be, a sick cat, whether it be a broken transmission, whether it be, we haven't had a good conversation in our family for years. Whatever it is, what kind of questions would be helpful in showing empathy and being empathetic? Well,
first of all, it's coming from a place of curiosity and not from a place of resolution. So when you approach the conversation, it's curious. I'm curious what that experience is like for you. I'm curious how do you feel about that? Some questions that you might ask, has this happened before? Do you recognize these feelings? Is there something, if these feelings are recognizable, what did you do in the past to support you? Because we are all here right now in this moment, we've been through stuff. We've used our toolbox, we've used our resources, our courage, resilience, persistence, whatever tool you've used to bring us here in this moment. So sometimes it's helpful to remind someone where they've come from and what they did in the past to bring them here in this moment. So I use an analogy, for example, if you ever had a really bad flu and I'm lying there and going, I don't know how I'm gonna get to work tomorrow, never mind brush my teeth and get up out of bed. And so you fast forward a few weeks and someone says, well, Yvette, do you remember that was the week you were off with that really bad flu? I forgot, because when life carries on and I start feeling better, we forget the things that we've been through. So quite often it's helpful to remind someone, have you felt like this before? What did you do in the past? Did it work? Maybe it's something that you can use again. Maybe you can bring that into your life again. Another question might be, Do you have family resources? Do you have a spiritual guide, maybe a priest or somebody in the community that you could go to? Co-workers. So a lot now with the Mental Health First Aid program, and now with the Mental Health Advocate program, others are going to be taking the program too. So you have each other that you can connect with and debrief with and get support with as well from.
It's interesting because you're mentioning, empathetic response also means that I'm connected with support for myself, and we are going to talk about self-care. Yeah, I know. We are where we are right now. I want to hone in a little bit more. I think you've given us some good questions to probe, so to speak. However, I guess the other piece that I want to, I think we can get rather enamored, engaged in that moment. How do we maintain the idea of the boundaries we talked about earlier within that moment where someone is trusting you, is vulnerable? How do we ensure that we are in fact giving an empathetic response and not dipping into, Marv's home remedies of therapy?
Yeah, I think that's an individual basis. I think being aware of, is this yours to take on?
Yeah.
And it's not. And again, coming back to, am I trying to fix this? Am I trying to counsel?
Nice.
Am I trying to make it all better for everybody? And I know, especially somebody that chooses to be in the role of a mental health advocate, those qualities are there. Because that's why you're here. Because those are the things that drive. I do what I do because I'm that person.
Yeah.
Someone asked me, why did you become a psychotherapist? Because I knew there was hope, faith, that there was a different way of feeling. And when I went through that experience, I want to be able to share that experience with others. So people that are in a role of a mental health advocate, you're here because you get it.
Yeah.
You've been through stuff, and you don't want to see other people feel that way. It's hard. It's and it's really important, that self-care component. It's really hard because when you see someone that you care about in pain, it's not easy to receive that either.
No.
And especially when you're in the constant place of trying to fix it. When we talk about empathy, we often hear people say, walk in their shoes. Imagine you're in their shoes and walk in their shoes. And Brene Brown switches it, and I love it. She says, let's switch it up a bit. How about walking alongside them while they're in their own shoes?
Yeah.
So we're not walking in their shoes. First of all, we would never walk in their shoes because we wouldn't know exactly what that process or that feeling is like for them or the experience. But how about we walk alongside? So when you're walking alongside someone, you're not taking it on. You're not dragging them with you. You're going at their pace. It's not, come on, come with me. No, we're walking alongside in your experience, sharing your experience.
Cool. Are there any lines, and we talk about boundaries, but are there any lines that you'd want us, I'm a mental health advocate, I'm in a unit, in a factory, in a store, and people are beginning to, we're having good conversations. Let's just put it that way. But are there lines to be aware of? Just throwing one up. You mentioned earlier a hangover, a vulnerability hangover, right? Are there lines to be aware of that people may have crossed and they didn't even intend to? So they told you more than they actually wanted to tell you. Are there things like that we should be aware of? Because and please comment on this if this is wrong or if this is appropriate or not. But my sense is, as a mental health advocate, my goal is to understand what that person wants me to understand. That's it. I don't need to probe further. I don't need to dig further, again, within the context of no self-harm or anything. It's really what they want to tell me. So how is it that I navigate this conversation knowing that they may have boundaries they're not aware of. I have boundaries I'm going, ooh, I don't know what to do with, like the gray zone. What do you...
Well, I think being aware of where your gray zone is and saying things like, I'm not equipped to deal with it. I would love to take it, but I'm not equipped to deal with this. Would you like help in finding some supports?
Yeah.
Right? Or have you had supports in the past? What were they? Can we reach out to them now?
Cool.
Right? So you're not, it's not your job to be the counselor or the therapist. And it's okay to say, I would love to be able to fix this for you, but I don't have the skills to be able to do that.
That's right.
It's not my job, or it's not my within my realm to manage this for you. But I'd be more than happy to support you in getting supports. Okay. Would you like help around that?
Cool. I'm going to throw a scenario at you, sort of closing off how do we end these conversations, but what do you do with someone who now attaches to you? So you've had that conversation, and you mentioned earlier it can be quite rare to have someone actually listen to you and how valuable that is. So now you have someone regularly taking your time, regularly expressing expectations that you need to listen. Where do you go with that? Because I may have stepped into it, but I don't want to stay there.
Again, guiding them to other professionals that can support. It brings me to mind. I went through a bout of sciatica. For anyone who's had sciatica, it's absolute hell. And I went to an osteopath. I went, a massage and acupuncture things of nature to help with it as well. But osteopath actually took me from the pain to healing it. And I was seeing him on a regular basis. And we had a conversation latter end of me feeling better. And he says, okay, I think you can come maybe once every 2 months now. And I remember feeling like, it was like breaking up with a boyfriend. It's like, no, what do you mean? Because I enjoy, I knew I was at the point of healing, but I also enjoyed our time together, and it was preventative in my mind. I'm like, no, I'm not letting this thing come back to me. And at some point in time, we do have to grow.
Yeah.
You don't have to have somebody enable you, or you have to, literally, it's like a baby crawling to a baby walking. You got to get on your own 2 feet. Now, if someone's continuously being that person, well, you're not going to walk from crawling, right? You're going to stay in the crawling position. So sometimes that boundaries may upset some people, and that's okay too.
Yeah.
That you're not. Sometimes boundaries, the person on the receiving end of it isn't going to like it too much, but in the long run, it's really for their own good and for your own good as well.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, thank you. I want to sort of close this session by ensuring that as mental health advocates, you're aware that you do have support around you, that you have people you can call. There's other organizations within the local, again, to bounce ideas off. The idea of empathetic response here isn't to be all and end all for everyone. Rather, it's an approach to be present with someone in a very helpful way. Thank you again, Yvette.
Pleasure.